I mean, there are a lot of people with whom this is just an illusion. See? There are people saying this. It's so easy to say this. And we have to admit the fact that you get kids in the cloister who come up to you saying that if I stay here anymore, my life is going to be wasted, see? And you know, for some people that's not true. And you know, for some other people it is true. We have to face the fact. And we know that there are some people who come to us and say, I have to leave in order to follow God more perfectly. Whereas on our books, in the black and white, it says, this is where you follow God most perfectly. See, there's our problem. And of course, this is the jam that we're all in. It's something that we've all recognized in the church. And what we're doing now, we're struggling with it. We're fighting with this. We're trying to sweat this thing out together. And we are sort of trying to figure it out. And nobody has answers. And it's useless to expect that sitting here 3 or 4 days we're going to come up with a whole lot of real bright answers. But what we are going to do is for 4 or 5 days we're going to be brothers and sisters in Christ, and we're going to let this thing which has not happened before happen. That, I guess there have been, well, I don't think there's ever been a retreat of nuns here before. And so let's start. I mean, now's the time to begin. See, there should be a kind of retreat of contemplative nuns here. It's great. This is the kind of thing. I mean, one of the big questions that we're all facing is, what are we supposed to do? This is what we're supposed to do. Not every community. But I certainly feel that our community has to do a little of something like this. I mean, I've had a lot of experience dealing with Zen Buddhists and Muslims and people like that, and this is great. It's very fine. But also, I think we've got to do something for our own. And not just a question of, giving out a message, but getting together in a place where we can talk and think and pray and so forth. And so this is one of the things that we can do. And the key word is presence. The great thing that we have to do now is not a matter of a duty or a job or anything like that. It's something that we've got to let happen. Is simply to be present to one another for these 2 or 3 days, which means that you've got to do some talking too. See, I want to get to know you. You want to get to know me, because probably if you've just been reading my books, you don't know me. better get a look at the real thing before you make a judgment. And I really shouldn't be masquerading in this religious habit, because what I usually wear is a pair of overalls. And maybe tomorrow morning I may come just in my ordinary garb, but at least I thought I should begin by shaving and looking presentable. Coming down like this. But you see, it's so important to realize that the church is presence. So is the contemplative life, presence. Community is presence, not institution. So what we've been banking on is the ability to substitute institution for real presence. Take the question, for example, of silence, which I may go into in a minute because I got some interesting stuff on it here. But just take the question of Trappist silence, our specialty here. See, this is a great source of problems, and also a great source of graces. But when it gets to be formalized to a certain point, it ceases to be a source of grace and becomes a source of problems, because it is not any longer helping presence. See, but for us, for a long time, the rule of silence was a means of being absent from one another. Now, if you run a community on the basis that everybody is put together to be absent from one another, you are creating something contradictory in terms. And if you create something contradictory in terms and throw people into it, they're going to hurt. And then when they hurt, you tell them you haven't got faith, see, they will follow you for a little while. But after a while, they will say that this gymnastic is not worth doing for a lifetime. See? So that what you've either got to do is change the contradiction, find out if the contradiction is necessary, and resolve it in some way so that it's no longer a contradiction. Because contradiction per se isn't the only thing in the contemplative life. See? I mean, obviously you've got to be contradicted, and you have to give up your own ideas and that sort of thing, but just the contemplative life is not just systematic frustration. And it's not systematic frustration. For example, the question of cultural values comes up. It's not just systematic frustration of cultural values. The person has to be able to get along without. I mean, you can't bank on hearing a symphony every night, and one has to be able to get along without it. But it's not just for that.